In the early 1980s, Sony released a pan tilt unit called an HVR200, and it allowed the camera operator to remotely pan and tilt a video camera. It was a heavy piece because the cameras of the day were relatively heavy. This is a solid metal unit, and it's not working properly. We're going to take it apart and see what's wrong with it and get it working. This is called an HVR200. It's a pan tilt unit, and the idea is I'm going to put this pan tilt unit onto this boom, this crane, and it'll allow me to pan and tilt my camera on the workbench without having to reach up to it, which will be especially useful if I've got the camera up, 6 or 7 feet in the air. This is the remote control unit. It's got about a 30-foot cable. What I used to use this thing for at one time was it's rusty because it was outside there for a while. Used it with the security camera there for a bit, but what after in the years since I bought it, what it was originally purchased for was back in the day in the early 80s when I was doing weddings, you'd get into a situation where you'd get some funny old priest in a Catholic church that would allow you to have a camera up front, but he wouldn't allow you to have an operator up front. So this little piece Sony made allowed you to remotely control the camera, and it had another wired remote control to control the zoom lens on the camera. And I could just sit back, off to the side with a little monitor and my 2 remote controls and zoom in and zoom out and tilt up and down. You turn this thing on, it runs off batteries, 4 AA batteries, as you can see. But I have a feeling it probably needs some belts. So let's take this thing apart and just see what is inside this thing. I'm interested to see myself. Oh, yeah, that wasn't supposed to do that. I'm pretty sure there's a belt that's slipping. Okay, there's one side. As you can see, there's a couple of limit switches. This is to set the maximum tilt. It only goes so far, so that's to prevent you from tilting it too far. As you can see, it's got some nice metal gears in this thing. Like, you don't see quality like this. There's no plastic in this thing. It's beautiful. Wow, I gotta get into the actual mechanism here. There are more screws up top here. But how to get those ones? Push through the pin here. Lift the top off. Aha! I've never had this thing apart, so aha, there it is. Okay, there's a belt here, and there's another belt over here. Let's just plug this thing in and just see it go through its paces with the cover off it. So if I turn it on, oh yes, see this belt here is slipping. The belt's not broken though. I might be able to get away with just cleaning that one. That might be good enough. Let me just try cleaning that belt because it's definitely not broken. It doesn't appear to be stretched too badly. I mean, I might get away with putting an elastic band on it, but I certainly don't think I have a belt that size. So we'll try cleaning it first. Now, as you can see, this fan gear actually has a few teeth that are kind of buggered up on this thing. If we look closely here, there looks to be a few teeth here that are kind of worn. That was because the camera I had been using with this thing was one that was too heavy, and it caused the gear to bind and get damaged. I was using this thing with a big professional camera. This was designed for use with like a Sony camera, like one of the old. This would have been back in the days of like the HVC 2400 or 2800 camera, and I was using this thing with either a DXC 1800 or a 3M. Might have been a 3M. It was a tube camera back in the day, because that's what we were using. This goes back to the 80s. And I had an 1800 as well. It might have been the 1800. I'm pretty sure it was the M3 that I would have been using with this. It was fairly heavy, and it was just a little too heavy. This worked, but as you can see, it damaged the gears. So I'm just gonna let this dry up here, and I may end up putting some rosin on here to make it stick a little better, because rosin always does good to help belts that are slipping. Let's get some rosin, and we'll put some rosin on this tilt belt. The thing with rosin is it's extremely sticky. So when it dries a bit, it'll make the belt quite sticky. And you can see now it'll actually stall the motor out. And here's the switches. If I'm going down and it hits the down tilt switch, stops it, but I can still go up. And I'll hit the other switch over here, it stops. Now there's slightly different for the pan. The pan has a variable resistor here which turns with it, and because it has a limit, it has a limit switch on the left extreme, but you can set it from 30 degrees to 260 degrees for what they call the pan limit, or the auto pan, because if you put it in auto mode, here's the auto mode, it will just scan back and forth. So for example, if you wanted to use one of these to control a security camera, you could. That's the auto. Manual, get your left and right, and up and down. I think that belt is probably okay, and I think the other belt is also probably okay. Let's just see here. Yeah, there's plenty of torque on this one. I can't stop it. So that belt is okay. It was just the tilt belt, because it's not reduced as much gear wise, but I think we'll be okay. Now I can put this thing back together, and we'll attach the camera to it and see how it works. So that goes on like that. That piece goes under. Now back in the early 80s, if you had to ask how much one of these pan tilter units cost, you couldn't afford it. This piece here itself was, I forget the exact amount. I didn't pay full price for it, but it wasn't cheap. It was expensive. This thing was probably $1,000 or more for this thing. To say, if you had to ask, I'm sure it was more than $1,000. If you had to ask how much it was, you couldn't afford it. I've never seen one before. I've never seen anybody else with one. But at the time I was working for a Sony dealer, so I was able to get deals on stuff that Sony had brought in for shows and stuff that never sold. So I was able to get deals on this type of stuff. So same with when I had my professional cameras, my M3 and stuff. That camera was probably 20 grand or so, right? But to buy the camera, I paid a fraction of that thing. I paid $6,500 for it. I paid like $10,000 for a professional recorder and an M3, and then I moved up to Betacam, and I got a good deal on a Betacam as well, because I bought leased stuff that had been returned from TV stations that had I'd leased them for a few years, and now they were upgrading. Okay, this piece goes back in like that. Somewhere like this. There we go, like that. And then this old rusty pin goes back in through here. It goes back in like that. And there's a bearing cap that goes back on there. It's right here. That goes on like that, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. And then the two side pieces hold the unit together. Okay, let's hook this thing up and see how well it performs. Okay, the pan tilter unit is connected. As you can see, I can move my camera around on my bench. So now if I've got an overhead shot, I don't have to get up to adjust the camera. I can just pan it over to whatever I'm working on. If I'm working on a board and I got a close-up, I still have to get up to adjust the angle of the camera, because I don't have a remote control for the zoom. Unfortunately, with these stupid new cameras that Sony has got, they have an app for your phone to zoom it, and well, see that it's down to my limit there, and I don't want to use the app, so there we go. I can up and down, and I can even change the speed for the panning, right? I can pan it fast, or I can pan it slow. And for you guys wanting to get a look at what my improvised camera crane looks like, well, here's my tripod here. And as you can see, I've just extended the arm by just zap tying a tripod around here. And basically what it's doing is it's just clamped down. The legs of the tripod here are actually clamped onto the rubber grip, which is what's holding the tripod, the second tripod, to the first one. And here I've got my very heavy camcorder mount on here with my other camera. This is the pan tilt mount, and here's the camera I record with. So that's my crane. And I don't have to use it with the pan tilt head, but it'll certainly, I think, make things a little easier when I'm shooting. And yeah, this is a heavy duty zap tie, because if that were to let go, well, we'd have a big problem. We'd have a camera and a heavy, I mean, that thing there weighs about, that pan tilt unit there, it probably weighs 6 or 7 pounds. It's quite heavy. It's all metal, as you saw. But anyway, that's the setup that I'm using here for shooting with the boom. And I'm shooting with this little camera here, which is the Sony, the AX, what is it, AX33. The camera I'm shooting this portion of the video with is an AX100, which is my real, more professional unit that I use with a big professional tripod. And I use this one for shooting my scenery videos with. And anything that I'm being paid. I use the AX100 if I'm going out on a paid shoot. Anyway, that's my setup for filming the videos. Hope you enjoyed this one. And we'll catch you later. Thanks for watching.